A function f is given by f of x equals 4x cubed minus 2x squared minus 7x plus 4. So that is a cubic. The highest power of x is to the power 3, and it is a positive cubic because the coefficient of x cubed is 4. So it'll look something like that, a positive cubic, where it has a maximum and then a minimum. And the question is asking us to find the gradient of this graph when x equals 3. So for example, if this was our x and y axis at x equals 3, there's a point on our graph, and if we were to draw a tangent line to that point, a straight line at that point, whatever gradient that tangent line has is the gradient of the function at that point. So in calculus, half of it is differentiation, looking at the slope. So if we're looking for the gradient, we need to find the gradient function. So to get that, we denote that as f prime of x. The first derivative of the function f is the gradient function. And to find the derivative, we use the derivative of a polynomial term rule, where we take the power of x, multiply it out the front, so 3 times 4 gives 12, and then we subtract 1 from the power. So 3 minus 1 becomes 2. So the derivative of 4x cubed is 12x squared. Now we can do the same with the next term, where the power of 2, multiply out the front to give minus 4, x to the power of 2 minus 1, so that's to the power of 1. And when we have power of 1, we don't need to write it. Next term, the derivative of minus 7x, we can think of that as to the power of 1, right, just to help us use the rule. So 1 times minus 7 gives minus 7. We subtract 1 from the power. 1 minus 1 is 0. So x to the power of 0 is actually equal to 1. So we're left with just minus 7. The other way of thinking about that one is for any straight line, for example, this line here, y equals negative 7x, the gradient, the rise over the run, is the coefficient of x. Right, you remember that from y equals mx plus c. So that is the gradient. That is the derivative. Yeah. But again, using the rule does still work. And finally, the derivative of a constant is 0. And you can think of that as, for example, if y equals 4, that is a horizontal line on the graph which has a gradient of 0. Right? It's got no steepness to it, so the derivative of that constant is 0. And we don't need to write that in our gradient function, the plus 0. Now, the gradient function takes an input x to give an output of the gradient. So, looking at the question, we are given a certain x value, and we are looking for the gradient. So substituting in 3 in for x, we can find the gradient of the function f when x equals 3. So 3 squared minus 4 times 3 minus 7. 3 squared is 9. 9 times 12 is 108. Minus 4 times 3, that's 12. Minus 7. What's that? 108 minus 12 is 96. 96 minus 7 is 89. And that would be our final answer. However, just as a sentence, we would say the gradient of f of x when x equals 3 is 89. In other words, f prime of 3 equals 89. Right? So that last line, that equation, is equivalent to the line above it, just explaining it in words. But again, don't need to write that. Our final answer is 89. And so that is an achieved question because we found the derivative, step 1. We then substituted in an x value to find the gradient.